What's up, everybody? This is Miss G. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. 50 Shades of Glow. YouTube was saying, oh, we're not streaming, but welcome. Thank you for another welcome, and thank you for what's up, Facebook Live. This is Miss G, 50 Shades of Glow, Africa Awaits. We are here tonight, Monday, with another clip of learning about the continent. We're talking about traveling uh, to the continent, and today is Tanzania. Tanzania. Anybody in the chat has traveled or lived in Tanzania? I know a guy reached out to me earlier and he had some talk about Tanzania. And I told him, come on and talk about it because I like everyone to understand and get a grasp of what of the different countries in real time. So I appreciate y'all comments, but I would love for you to come on. Nathaniel, hello, welcome. Welcome. I hope you had a great weekend. We are talking about Tanzania today. So, going to wait for a couple of folks to get on, but I'll probably start. Had a late start. YouTube, my YouTube people, what's up? Anybody out in these YouTube streets? YouTube was saying that they weren't live streaming at the moment. You know, YouTube be in their feelings. But I hope everything is good with y'all. We're going to get into Tanzania. I traveled there. Anybody in the chat, put Tanzania in the chat or TZ. Put TZ in the chat if you have traveled to Tanzania. And if you have traveled to Tanzania or you're from Tanzania, I want you to come on and send me a request so we can talk about Tanzania. I've traveled, I was in Tanzania, I went to Zanzibar on tourist stuff. I had um, I had studied Tanzania, followed a couple of folks that were from the US, expatriated to Tanzania, and got a lot of good information. And I was going to move to Tanzania. And then my niece was in Kenya next door. And I just decided, you know what, let us be closer together instead of I'm in one country, she in the other country. So it worked out. And I'm finding that, Kenya is doing really, really great things. But let's talk about Tanzania. Tanzania. So Tanzania is in East Africa and right on the coast. You know, I always give y'all a little bit of history, right? So, Tanzania uh, was established like way before the 10th century, but that's when the Persians came on like the 10th century to like the 16th century, and it was occupied by the Persians and the Arabs. And it wasn't a kingdom, it was a sultanate. I've never heard of a sultanate. So they had sultans. So, like the Alibaba type of stuff. Like, I'm telling you, Africa the bomb. Africa shows you everything. And all of his originations came from Africa, the motherland, right? So when Tanzania was being established, it really wasn't called Tanzania at that. It was called Tanganyika, Tanganyika, and like in the 1800s, um, it turned over to no. It was still Tanganyika all the way till its independence in 1961. Okay. Um, but during like the 10th century, before the 10th century, really, because the 10th century is when the Europeans came and started noting it, but it was way before that. And it was occupied by several uh, people from even West Africa came over. West Africa. So to today, they have over 100 tribes. But the number one and the origination tribe, if I said that right, is Swahili. And it was the Bantu Swahili speaking tribe. That was like the original number one. And that's what they have going on now is Swahili, right? So, and back in the day, they called it the Swahili coast. That was even before, like Tanzania was Tanzania. That's where the people gathered. Now, um, right, the Persians came and they traded. The typical. If anyone that has followed me knows, the history, the gold. Africa is made out of gold, literally, right? Gold, diamonds, all of that. So this is nothing different, right? Nothing different. So the Persians came and, um, you know, traded the gold, ivory, and the slaves. Folks, I don't want to say folks sleep on how valuable the slaves were, but they were because they were free labor. So when they got the gold and the ivory and when you go to these different countries and you see all of the embellishment and the architecture that was put together, not only with on and on at the gold or the you know um, the different I guess minerals or uh, embellishments they had, but who made it put together? Crystal, welcome. Who made it uh, put it together were the slaves. So we talk about slaves, but they were a part of making money. They were part of making money. Um, and I always tell you, it always goes back to today. So places that have a lot of labor, very cheap. It's no different. They just got to pay them something now. But this is where money is made. I worked at Amazon uh, about 10 years ago, right? A little more than, no, it was more than 10 years ago. But I worked at Amazon. I was home with the kids. Home with the kids during the day. So I wanted a little bit of money, you know. So I worked at night and homeschooled the kids during the day. And we were in there like little human robots. And everyone knows the multi-billion-dollar company that Amazon is. So at that time, I think the start pay, and that was good pay, was like $12, $13 an hour. um, so 13, $15 an hour, but the company's making billions. It's no different. They was just paying us a little something because they have to. So the same thing. Um, but anyway, moving on from that. So that was their trade back in from the 10th to the 16th century. And then they went into really heavy with different sultanates. So it wasn't a sultanate, it was sultans. Tanzania had was a sultanate, not a kingdom, but a sultanate. Never heard of that. Really interesting, right? And they had sultans, and then they had one sultan that was, really strict and was making that money because he was getting them slaves, honey. And his name was Tippy Top. Tippy Top. He has like a 12 thing name that kind of repeated itself, but his nickname was Tippy Top, just for y'all to know. Y'all can go into the deep dive a little later. But he was heavy into the slave trade. And then the Germans took over, and then the British fought. That was so interesting. The British fought in many of the countries for slave trade to end, but then they turned around and kind of did it, but in a different way. You know what I'm saying? They came in and was like, oh my God, no, this is wrong to have slaves, but then they gave like dirt cheap labor and stole everything. So I just allegedly don't know where that big diamond that's sitting in Queen Elizabeth's crown, but allegedly, right? But they were always fighting to say, oh, we don't want, y'all shouldn't have slaves, but then they still benefited. So that's kind of interesting to me. Anyone here from Tanzania? I had invited a young man. If y'all go on, oh, and please share this. Sharing is caring, y'all. Sharing is caring. And so you don't have to repeat this to your friends. Sharing is caring. Please give it a like. Y'all know the deal. Y'all watch enough YouTube and Facebook to know, you know, to get the algorithm, to get people to understand and watch it. Please share, like, jump on to ask any questions, jump over to 50 Shades of Glow, a 50 plus lifestyle, and give me a hit and the subscribe, because your sis be struggling in getting them subs, honey. But I'm getting there. I'm creeping up. My goal is to hit 500 in the next month. I'm at 300. Y'all help me out. Just hit the subscribe button, because it's a lot of good content and we're educating ourselves and all that good stuff. So anywho, all right. So what else? So other things about Tanzania. Kilimanjaro is there, the tallest mountain in Africa. Kilimanjaro. And I heard it is a beast. Like, you have to almost train. You do have to train, not almost. Like, you have to train for the hikers out there. You have to train to walk that mountain. And you have to have a not a guide, but it's a security. You have to have like a security and a guide, because it's wildlife. And so you can't walk it alone. You can't hike it alone. Who just Mr. Kai? Hey, Eddie. Lakeview in the house. Lakeview in the house. Yes, you cannot hike it alone. It's a beast to hike, and you have to practice. You have to train for to walk Kilimanjaro. But one of the wonders is Kilimanjaro, absolutely gorgeous. Then you have the Serengeti, absolutely gorgeous. It is the home of the Big Five, okay, of the Big Five, honey. And then if you're there like in the fall, September to November, you may be able to see the Great Migration. And does anybody know what the Great Migration is? So it's the wildebeest, and it looks like it's tens and thousands of them, and it almost looks like, how the bees go and they're like waving, but the wildebeest go from they come out of hibernation from Kenya and go over to Tanzania to mate. And then after they mate, they come back and it's just wild. It's really epic to see. Very epic to see. So you have the big five when the Serengeti. You can live on lodges. Um, Anyone that is planning to go, I have a client actually going to. She's doing a 5 country trip. They're doing Egypt. They're doing North Africa, Egypt.